And away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Risk is going to join. Not sure if Eric's going to join. Not sure if a third person's going to join. Either way, the show must go on. Now, before I get into the news, I have one important announcement which should certainly be relevant, not just when this recording comes out, but certainly relevant for the next few years. I don't get it. What's with six? At this point, I don't give a damn about. Actually, I never gave a damn to begin with. I think it's just. Oh my gosh, it's getting. I think it's getting annoying. It was funny at first how stupid it sounds and how people reacting to 6-7 also being stupid, which I don't blame them. However, now we're just sick and tired, and I think everyone can agree. Now, this is not the first time I've called out on brain rot, and Eric will certainly say the same thing. Now, just before I started recording this episode, I was scrolling on Instagram Reels and saw this video about some school in America and these children singing 6-7-6-7-6-7-6-7 and just moving their hands up and down like you would do when you say 6-7, because that's the joke. That's how you know they're saying 6-7. I feel like sometimes I feel like the United States is just a social experiment, and it is a social experiment and a cult too. But we don't get into that unless we get an actual American involved in this, because it has to be called out immediately. It's an outrage. Now I can't say the UK is any better, but at least it can't be as bad as what's going on in America. Well, that's life. That's social media. I think that's a great lesson for parents to have children. If you give children access to social media at a young age, like elementary, primary school age children, this is what happens. These children are going to say random references to literally absolutely nothing. They're saying it just because for the sake of it. And even if there is a reason and origins behind something, it's always going to come from influencers, random members of the public that have been fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to be given relevancy and the clout to spread along whatever nonsensical bullcrap that they can think under the top of their heads, only for millions of people around the world to repeat said reference over and over again until eventually we want to analyze ourselves. And honestly, I do not want to see that happening with anyone. But I feel that at some point people actually want to end their lives from that point, because why bother at this point? And no one should. You think that's bad? Wait until you enter a country that's currently in a global conflict with military occupation and violence. That's the worst that could happen. But nonetheless, these are first world problems. I'm annoyed, but you know what? It could be worse. And whatever the worst is yet to happen, anywhere, I don't think anyone would go through that either. Anyway, that's enough of my rant about brain rot. Goodness me. This is the state of our society. Random references from social media, people saying it randomly without some kind of context. They say it because it's funny. How is it funny? No one gives a damn. No one gives a damn. And they never will. And you think everyone's in on the joke? Not even my family knows what this crap is. They don't know what 6-7 is. They don't know what the story is behind the phrase. And they don't even know half of the. They don't even know a quarter of popular memes that came out this year, 2025. Or they don't. In fact, they don't know much about memes that have even existed that have appeared in the last 10 years. People think they're gonna know these references. They don't, because there are people in this world that aren't chronically online, nor unemployed. And this is coming from a guy that's actually currently unemployed. But I won't be for long. But that's a different story for another time. Nonetheless, it's just stupid. A little bit funny, but mostly stupid. But then it gets very annoying. Anyway, now I'm done with this rant. Let's get right into the news. More than 60 United Nations members sign cybercrime treaty opposed by right group. On Saturday, UN member countries signed the first treaty targeting cybercrime in Hanoi, with Vietnam President Luang Chuang calling the event a historic milestone. The UN Convention Against Cybercrime was proposed in 2017 by Russian diplomats and approved by consensus this year after negotiations led by the UNODC, targeting offences from phishing to online trafficking. Tech firms and rights groups objected, with the Cybersecurity Tech Accord representing more than 160 firms, including Meta, Dell, and Infosys absent, while more than a dozen rights groups called safeguards weak. Ratifications by 40 nations will trigger the convention, expected to streamline cooperation against cybercrime, while the European Union, United States, and Canada sent diplomats and officials present in Hanoi. Human rights groups warned the pact's language could be misused, with Human Rights Watch citing recent arrests for online dissent and critics noting Vietnam's controversial hosting role. Language could be misused. Where have I heard that before? I feel like there was a story a couple of months ago in the United Kingdom where there was a certain law which gives authority across the nation any viable reason to arrest everyday citizens for things that they have posted online. So I'm not just talking about social media. You can post anything online on a blog or a website you created, and if the government sees it and they believe you're spreading hate speech, they will send authorities to your house. You're under arrest. You pay a fine or serve some prison time, and the rest will be history. I mean, that's just me. I feel I've heard something like this before. And you know what? I don't blame them. Whilst I understand we have to be cautious about our security online, however, there are certain lines that shall not be crossed. Not on the grounds of individual rights, but also on the grounds of surveillance. And even if the surveillance is in good intention, how will that surveillance be executed? And will it be effective in targeting and pointing out any abnormalities or any traces of criminal-like behavior? It's up for discussion. Nonetheless, all I can say for this situation, all I can say for the signing ceremony and high-level conference, United Nations Convention Against Cybercrime, it's a start to some extent. However, I feel that there should be some amendments so that there is satisfaction with the rights groups. I'm not sure about the tech firms, but I know the rights groups are certainly making good points. I never thought that rights groups and tech firms would actually be on the same side for once, opposing something of the United Nations work. You do not see that often. It's quite interesting to see. Well, there's a first time for everything. There always is. Children's Booker Prize, Nurturing Future Storytellers. Set to begin in 2026, the Booker Prize Foundation announced a Children's Booker Prize to be awarded annually from 2027 for fiction targeting children aged 8 to 12, published in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Responding to low reading rates, the Booker Prize Foundation says the prize will champion children's fiction and gift 30,000 copies to young readers, as only 30% enjoy reading for pleasure. Children's laureate Frank Cotterill-Boyce will chair a combined panel including 2 other adult judges and 3 child judges selecting a shortlist of 8 books. Prize rules specify that shortlisted authors will each receive 2,500 and the winning author 50,000 to be shared with translators or illustrators at the February 2027 event. Backed by the AKO Foundation, The Booker Prize Foundation calls this its most ambitious endeavor in 20 years, and the first major prize since 2005. Now, at first, when I was reading the first few paragraphs, my concerns are when giving out the Children's Booker Prize to the winning author, on what grounds will they be judged on? And of course, who will be judged? And reading that there's going to be 2 adult judges and 3 child judges. Okay, at least one of my questions has been answered. So it's not just entirely adults that's going to do the judging of these children books. There's actual children that'll be judging them as well, which actually makes a lot more sense than it's made out to be. So that's great. Other than that, I'll have to say, this is a great. I mean, although children make a small percentage of the world's population, they are certainly our future. Now, debating how well they do, we can't judge them too early. However, there is a chance to give an opportunity for these children to flourish and excel in whatever they want to be when they grow up. So back to the Children's Booker Prize. Again, great initiative. This is a great idea for not just an award but just an event revolving children. And yeah, I hope this does really well. I really hope so. DNA from Napoleon, ill-fated 1812 army reveals what likely led to the soldier's demise. On October 24th, geneticist Nicolas Rescorvan of the Institut Pasteur reported in Current Biology that ancient DNA from Napoleonic soldiers' teeth revealed 2 fever-causing bacteria. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte led a disastrous campaign in Moscow with 615,000 men, but only about 110,000 survived due to cold, hunger, and disease. After extracting and sequencing DNA from 13 soldiers' teeth, the team detected Salmonella enterica in 4 soldiers and Borrelia recurrentis in 2, pathogens causing paratyphoid and relapsing fever. The study challenges earlier PCR-based findings that linked typhus to the remains, finding no trace of Rickettsia provasci and discounting previous identifications of Bartonella quintana. Researchers say the findings help trace pathogen evolution, although Rescorvan cautioned the study sampled a tiny fraction of casualties and cannot determine infection prevalence. Well, the more you know. So, with sampling of DNA and looking at the potential diseases that existed at the time, we've now uncovered how Napoleon. I'm not sure what the story's made out to be. All I got from the story is the ancient DNA, diseases, bacteria has been found in these remains, such as salmonella, paratyphoid, different pathogens. How ill were these men? Goodness me, man. I get that healthcare is not as advanced today as it was back then, but goodness me. How could someone be that ill for that long and then eventually they kick the bucket? Wow, how ill were these men? That is shocking, man. That is absolutely shocking. North Korea using crypto IT workers to dodge UN sanctions. The multilateral sanctions monitoring team found North Korea's Cyberforce stole at least 1.65 billion US dollars, including 1.4 billion dollars from Bybit, and used stablecoin for procurement transactions. In recent years, under Kim Jong-un, Pyongyang ramped up cyber operations, making hacking a key foreign currency source amid strict UN sanctions. 38 North's report found North Korean IT workers hid their nationality to secure animation contracts linked to Amazon and HBO Max, while Amazon said it never directly hired these workers. According to MSMT findings, Pyongyang funnels proceeds from $1.2 billion in cryptocurrency gains into unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs. Most labor deployments went to China, with others sent to Russia, Laos, Cambodia, Equatorial Tanzania, and plans includes 40,000 laborers to Russia. Well, I guess Russia isn't the only country that's utilizing crypto to get around global sanctions. To say North Korea is behind in technological advancement and whatever infrastructure related capabilities people would argue that's needed for a stable society, well, there's no proving that North Korea is behind. Now, it's not as advanced as China, Japan, or South Korea, but nonetheless, North Korea is not poor. There is a sizable economy size in North Korea, and despite not being well connected with the world, very isolated from a majority of the world, with connections with China and Russia, this comes to show that anything and everything from this moment going forward is only going to get more advanced, more efficient, more effective, even smarter than it currently is. And of course, the people involved in such projects are going to be a lot more crafty in not just keeping the operations in under wraps in incognito mode, also executing these projects to an extent it benefits those who are primarily going to be the beneficiaries. I'm not just talking about North Korea. This goes for any other nation. There will be a few countries that may not be as rich per person, or just may not have a big enough economy as other countries, given its size in population or landmass, but that does not mean they won't grow. There are economies around the world that are still developing, and they will exceed levels in the next few years than the current levels we have today. That is for certain. And I would keep an eye out for Africa, because although a majority of countries are far below the poverty line right now, once African countries actually get together and produce goods for themselves and services for themselves and for others within the continent, Africa is going to be a dominant force that cannot be stopped. It may potentially rival Europe and America. That time will come eventually. Maybe not next year, or the year after that, or the year after that, and maybe not the following decade. But at some point, Africa will be on top, not by population or its economy size, but by the advancement and the functioning of their societies, despite how different their countries' cultures are from each other. There will be a rise in Africa. You just gotta wait until what kind of rise that these Africans are in for. Now, on an unrelated note, and I think I remember the last time I was talking about, no, not on the podcast, but I remember back when I was at the trap, if you know, you know, in the accommodation that they provided, I recall that a girl that I went to college with was going to be featured, or has been featured, in a film. I'm not sure which picture distributor it was, but it's a big picture distributor such as Universal, Columbia, 20th Century Fox. These are the big guys. And, you know, I'm proud that she's doing very well, but at what cost, I say. And actually made a social media post on that. And if you don't know what video that was, I mentioned the Matrix at one point. That's how you know that I was talking about that girl. Now, now, what comes to mind now, quite recently, is a different girl at a different college I went to. And the reason going to that different college is just to do the bridging gap that my previous college did not provide. And I saw this girl, different girl, not to be confused with the one that's made in the feature part of a feature film. She had appeared on a social media post for the BBC News UK social media account. Now, for my sake, I'm not going to say her name, just for the sake of her privacy, but even I don't say her name, you'll know who I'm talking about if this episode does point out any community notes, or if there's anyone in the comments referencing who that girl that might be, they can say it, go ahead. I have no problem, that's okay. It's a free country. We allow people to say what they like. Now, quite recently, in the last day or two, different different girl from different college, for as she appeared she actually been interviewed for the BBC that was posted onto the BBC News UK Instagram post, and the story was regarding diagnosis of OCD, or they're just talking about how many people that are waiting to be diagnosed or waiting for a diagnosis regarding do they have OCD or not. Now, firstly, I'm proud of her. I'm glad that she's doing very well for herself, getting these interviews and possibly potential presenting jobs she'll get in the future. Yeah, I feel like there's something else I'm gonna say, other than that I'm proud of her. She's doing well. Oh yes, just like with the first girl I was mentioning, the one that got featured in a full-length film for a picture distributor. I was wondering, what do these people providing these interviews? And I'm not attacking like mainstream media or anything, although I have my opinions and everyone's entitled to them, and that's okay. I'm just wondering, what's the long game? What is it? Is the information that's being presented to us aimed to achieve? And what information are we getting from these platforms? And I'm not talking about big news. I'm talking small news as well and independent outlets. And I'm certainly not saying do not listen to doctors. Don't believe what people are saying that this condition is real and that condition that is false. No, I'm not going all that. No, absolutely not. All I'm saying is if people talk about particular stories, how much of the story are you getting from a particular news outlet that's reporting said story? Because I've watched that social media post. I've watched that video on Instagram by the BBC regarding that story about OCD diagnosis, and they focused on the age range 18 to 24-year-olds about waiting for their OCD diagnosis, and a few years on, she's still waiting for her diagnosis, which is just outrageous. Why is it taking that long for anyone to get a diagnosis for anything? I mean, I know healthcare in the UK is down in the dumps, but I don't know it'd be that down in the dumps. Goodness me. But anyway, I think I think that Instagram post by the BBC, it says more than what it actually reports. It says so much more about waiting for a diagnosis for anything and the state of our healthcare. Look, if people have opinions that say that it's broken because certain governments are not giving enough funding, look, that's their opinions. Everyone's entitled to that. And of course, you don't have to agree with them either. I'm just saying, everyone has their say on how they view the situation. And you know what? I cannot blame them. But there's no arguing against these people. It's very important to understand what's going on with people and their day-to-day lives. And even if you may not like this person, you gotta ask yourself, why is that person the way that they are? And if possible, possibly ask that person. I mean, if you're gonna ask that person, what's the worst they can say? Because they don't know what you're thinking, and you don't know what they're thinking. If you talk it out, it clears up any misunderstanding about what a person is going through or whatever limitations people are having in their day-to-day lives. The point I'm getting at is don't always judge a book by its cover, because although the a book's cover may give a first impression that stands out to people, there is more to what the book cover says once you open the first page and look into the words that it's saying. You will learn more from the words alone than what you see from the cover itself. That's all I'm going to say. So again, for that girl that I went to college with, not the one that got the feature film, but the girl that was interviewed by the BBC regarding OCD diagnosis. I'm proud of her. I'm glad that she's raising awareness on OCD, regardless of what people's opinions are. Personally, I don't think we're questioning health experts enough. Because if there are people saying these conditions are not real, this is all made up, seriously ask yourself, how could that be the case? And how can you let these people say about these conditions? Not to say you should agree with them, but also saying you shouldn't dismiss them either. It's always important that you do your own independent research. And no matter how badly people take the wrong way of things, just remember, everyone's entitled to their opinions regardless of whether or not people agree with you. And it's also important that you don't just always believe anything that you see at first glance. Don't always assume what's being shown on the news as the only source of information for a particular story, because there are different news outlets that will have different perspectives. Not to say you shouldn't switch the news outlet that you're paying attention to. It's important that you have at least two or more news outlets to watch to see what perspective these news outlets are looking into when regarding and talking about a particular topic. Or in other words, improve on your media literacy. Now, some people on top may not like people having good media literacy because it takes away the elite's power to polarize our views and try and cause division, gets us hooked up on insanity, make us outrage. Because that's the thing, negativity always sells. Do not give Don't give the people on top that negativity. Don't give them that satisfaction of the negativity. It's important that we do our own research outside whatever information we've been presented at first, whether it be on social media or on cable channels or just any broadcast reports from mainstream media. Whilst they will tell you the information, as it happens, there will be a few that will have different perspectives from other outlets. And I think the perspective which you're looking at on a particular story is very, very important. And I'm glad I've learned that years ago. Whilst the story is true, what part of the story is a particular outlet covering? And what aspects of that story does that outlet believe is important to the listeners or viewers that are paying attention to the stories that these outlets are showcasing to them? I think, yeah, that's the cherry on top for me. So do your research, kids, because it will save you a lot of stress. Trust me, it really will save you a lot of stress. It may be a lot of hard work, but it will pay off. It will be worth it. Former Real Madrid goalkeeper Iker Casillas' housekeeper was arrested along with another individual days after the theft of five of his luxury watches, two of which were recovered. Spanish police and media announced on October 20. The National Police has solved the theft of five high-end watches from the home of a former professional footballer in Madrid, the police said in a statement. Asked by AFP about the identity of the victim, the police did not immediately respond. However, according to several Spanish media outlets, the victim is Iker Casillas, the former captain of the Spanish national soccer football team, winner of the 2010 World Cup and 3 Champions League titles with Real Madrid. The complaint was filed on October 16th, and after a rapid investigation, a man and a woman were arrested on October 21st, while the two suspects were planning to leave the country soon, the police added, specifying that the woman in question worked as a cleaner at the home of the former player. Well, that comes to show, no matter how much money you have and any relations with people that you can rely on to provide the services that you ask them to do, you can't trust anyone. Who can you trust? That that is that is shocking. So it's important that you stay vigilant, no matter who you talk to. No, so this is not to say that you shouldn't trust anyone, even if someone very close to you. You just have to be at least a little bit cautious about where the word goes out to and how it goes out to people. And what would people do with that information once they receive said information? It's a lot to think about. That should never happen to anyone, but yet here we are. Very unfortunate. Prince Andrew in talks with Palace to move out of Royal Lodge. On Friday, Prince Andrew is engaged in advanced talks with Buckingham Palace officials about leaving Royal Lodge, as the palace intensifies efforts to secure a voluntary handover due to his tenancy. Public outrage over a long-running rent-free arrangement and recent memoir revelations prompted renewed pressure, leading Prince Andrew to relinquish use of his Duke of York title last Friday. Documents released on Monday show previously censored rent details revealing a peppercorn rent clause and Prince Andrew's cast iron lease, while his millions spent on Royal Lodge renovations complicate compensation talks. The Public Accounts Committee has begun contacting the Crown Estate and Treasury for answers, while symbolic penalties like removing Andrew's royal banner at St George's Chapel, Windsor Canth, increase urgency as Buckingham Palace seeks to avoid a drawn-out inquiry. Potential solutions include moving Prince Andrew to Sandringham or Balmoral as privately owned options, but his preference to stay near London or Windsor, and compensation disputes involving the Crown Estate and Treasury complicate talks. Of course, as complicated the talks are, it's also complicated to understand how would anyone that was born into a royal family ever get into hot water like that? Prince Andrew has everything that anyone could ever ask for. All he has to do is to stay out of trouble. Keep a low profile, if possible. And if needs to be on a high profile, try and do something charitable if he wants to. It won't be a good look if he's doing it just because he has to. Prince Andrew was born into royalty. He has all the lavish and the luxuries that anyone could ever ask for. And for him to have any connection or involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and whatever the case is going down with him, even though people would argue if he's still alive or not, that is a massive fumble. The biggest fumble in history. Most of his life, he has already got everything that he wants. In fact, he already has a lot of things that many people could ever wish or dream about. And for him to have any involvement, or had involvement, with Jeffrey Epstein and the parties on the islands, really shakes the walls of the royal family. So the Treasury and all the other committees trying to negotiate where Prince Andrew is going to go and this or that and other estates. It's very unfortunate, but you reap what you sow, and that's that. It's unfortunate, however, you do the crime, You do the time. Okay, time's up. That's a reference from SpongeBob. It sticks for me. But yeah, it's still true though. Do the crime, do the time. Do the time? Well, I'm generally not sure how the royals do the time for the crime, if any. That's just me. I'm just saying. I'm generally not sure how that would work. Nonetheless, so much is going on because of connections with individuals that have done very, very questionable things in the past that would certainly result in prison time, and of course, negotiations and disputes about residency of members of the royal family. It's very unfortunate and really does not look good. Quebec passed special legislation to impose a new compensation system on doctors, where a portion of their pay will be linked to performance targets like the number of patients treated. The law allows fines of up to $500,000 per day on doctors taking concerted action to challenge the government's policies, and was rushed through after midnight on Saturday. The medical federations representing family doctors and specialists have announced intentions to challenge the law in court, arguing they lack resources to meet the proposed targets. Now, what are these targets? I mean, just on the just a compensation system on portion of the pay linking to performance targets. I think I know if Risk was here, I think he'd be all for that. And I'd say the same to some extent. But the thing is, what I want to know is, what are these targets? And can these targets be met? Will these targets ever be met by anyone? It can't be outrageously unrealistic. There has to be manageable. But that's only based off what I just read. I know there's certainly a lot more to this. However, I would have thought that businesses of any capacity would have done something like this already. But again, that's just businesses. This is about a compensation system for doctors, like in Quebec, in Quebec's healthcare system. So actually, I'm not sure if any other hospital or healthcare system in any other country around the world actually does something like this. Well, I know America would do something like this, but I doubt they would actually go ahead with it. Anyway, that's just me. Well, whatever happens with this law, actually, whilst I'm not too opposed on a system for a pay linking to performance targets, I think there's more work that has to be done. And looking at how doctors are taking concern, you know what? Fair enough. If doctors are concerned about this new law, then yeah, I don't see how can you say something is a good thing. Whilst whilst there are some aspects that could be beneficial, you got to ask, how is it beneficial? Are there any downsides to this? And will there be genuine concern? Which there are. So with the doctors that are raising concern, I hope eventually they do get their way because they're very important. They're very important in our lives to help us not just stay alive, but also to ensure that whatever problems that we have are solved and resolved to the best of their ability. So yeah, I understand. So it makes sense that there are concerns with this legislation in any capacity whatsoever. AI minister considering adding age restrictions on chatbot access to privacy bill. On October 24th, 2025, Canada proposed age limits on chatbot access in an upcoming federal privacy bill, with artificial intelligence minister Evan Solomon saying, "We're going to look at that." US wrongful death lawsuits by parents of teenagers who died by suicide have prompted calls for Canadian action, with Megan Garcia and California parents urging policymakers at Montreal sessions. Solomon said he has sought feedback from Canadians and an expert group, and cautioned it is very hard to jump to conclusions about how to regulate based on a horrific, tragic case. after discussing a suicide case with OpenAI. Rather than sweeping controls, Ottawa is considering targeted regulatory measures, with Solomon weighing a right to delete deepfakes to address deceptive AI-produced images and videos. Continued consultations with Canadians, experts, and firms will shape legislation. Solomon outlined his approach at Montreal conferences, and the October 24, 2025 report signaled near-term policy moves. Well. You know what? I can't blame them. Someone's trying to kick me off. Okay. AI Minister. Concerns about chatbot access for teenagers and wanting to unalive themselves. That I will absolutely agree. Whilst I have arguments about restricting access for social media use for children, I will say for chatbot access, I will say that there should be some restrictions for children to access AI chatbots. Because the thing is, AI chatbots are essentially a mirror of your thoughts. And now someone else could say something along those lines, but that's just my interpretation. Because when you put in a prompt on an AI chatbot, it will give you the answers based on the prompt. Now, to what extent you provide the prompt also varies on the response you will get. And knowing that the capabilities of AI to produce answers based on the prompts that people give it, no matter how little or how much detail goes into it, then now goes into the question